After criticism Tuesday, the first time I spelled it correctly. I always say Thursday, but this is Tuesday. It's not the same thing. And well, today I don't know what we have today. Let's read Russian news. This cold people news. News from the cold. Such a remarkable thing that Pepe Escobar is friend of everybody. Russians, Chinese, everybody. Pepe Escobar once in a lifetime. And here we have October 14. Tomorrow is the semi-final here, very close to this point in Elias Figueiredo Stadium. October 14, 2025. Russia ready for Ukraine settlement, Kremlin. Presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov says Moscow remains open to peace talks but is compelled to continue its military operation. And there's a file photograph. Russian servicemen of the 1430 Guards motorized rifle regiment during shooting training in Zaporizhia direction. Regular Russian soldiers. Moscow remains open to a peaceful resolution of the Ukraine conflict, but hostilities will continue for as long as Kiev continues to stall negotiations, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said. He has responding to French to French President Emmanuel Macron, who recently warned in a post on X that Russia will, quote-unquote, have to pay the price if it refused to demonstrate a readiness to come to the negotiating table. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Peskov stressed that Moscow has always preferred a diplomatic solution to the crisis, but noted that Kiev, with the backing of its Western allies, continues to reject all of Russia's proposals. That's definitely the whole truth about the conflict in Ukraine. Quote, Russia is ready for a peaceful settlement, Peskov said, emphasizing that Moscow's military campaign continues, quote unquote, due to the lack of alternatives. He asserted that Russia will ultimately accomplish its stated objectives and safeguard its national security interests. His comments come ahead of an expected meeting between US President Donald Trump and Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky, reportedly scheduled for Friday in Washington. Peskov said Russia appreciates Trump's ongoing diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict peacefully and hopes that, quote-unquote, the U.S. influence and the diplomatic skills of President Trump's envoys will help encourage the Ukrainian side to be more proactive and more prepared for the peace process, end quote. Russia has consistently reiterated its readiness for peace talks with Ukraine. Both sides were close to reaching an agreement in Istanbul in early 2022. But according to Moscow, Kiev withdrew after its Western backers encouraged to continue fighting. Russian officials have since maintained that neither Kiev nor its European backers are genuinely interested in ending the hostilities, accusing them of stalling negotiations by presenting ever-shifting conditions and disregarding its proposals. there's an opinion from this German citizen, Tariq Cyril Amar. The guy looks like a regular German, but has a Turkish name. October 14. The EU isn't at war with Russia. It's at war with the minds of its own citizens. And definitely, European leaders are trying to gaslight their populations into believing that it's Moscow that wants a fight, not them. Tariq Cyril Amar, a historian from Germany working at KOS University, Istanbul, on Russia, Ukraine, and Eastern Europe, the history of World War II, the cultural Cold War, and the politics of memory. Among other things, this particular moment in history will be remembered, whether in whole books, mere chapters, or if we are lucky, forgotten footnotes, as the great European drone scare. For weeks now, the population of NATO, EU, Europe have been subjected to a barrage of vague but scary reports about drone sightings. The drones have appeared seemingly over various places and installations, prominently including airports in Denmark and Germany. They are of unknown origin and unknown purpose, and quite often it is actually also unknown whether they are even real. Indeed, there is no proof of Russia being responsible for any of these incidents, as even Western media admit. We are once again asked to simply trust our politicians and quote-unquote experts. And that's it. The same ones who took months to stop pretending that Russia absurdly blew up its own Nord Stream pipelines in 2022, as late as spring 2023, Germany's Carlos Massala, who, for instance, who also believes, quote-unquote, Gherkin and, quote-unquote, Strelkov are two different individuals, just like Santa and Claus. I didn't get that, but I guess it's a Germanic joke, a Germanic soft joke. Was still spreading groundless speculation, really a conspiracy theory about a false flag attack on Nord Stream. And what the hell is this? Not a good college for sure. That is Russia. Yeah, false flag. Russia was the responsible. Who knows? And that's the stadium, the Elias Figueiredo Stadium. I will try to go to see this France-Morocco match, semi-final. And back to the article. And oh, coincidence, also recently Moscow, we are told, that has had nothing better to do than oblige Western information warriors with 3 further short of incidents. A purported electronic warfare attack on the plane of EU despot and de facto US proconsul Ursula von der Leyen over the Bulgarian city of Plovdiv, an alleged incursion into Estonian airspace and low flyovers over German frigate Hamburg during a recent NATO exercise. In reality, those 3 stories share only one thing with the Great Drones saga. They don't hold up to scrutiny. The case of the alleged Plovdiv GPS attack is so shoddy and created so badly, so quickly, that it's being consigned to oblivion. Yeah, people are crazy, you know. Right here in Chile, you barely can believe there's really a war over there. The incursion into Estonian airspace did not happen either, due to an agreement that Estonia itself signed in 1994 it cannot claim a 12-mile but only a 3-mile zone in the relevant area. Estonia's case is hysterical to begin with. The 1994 agreement deprives it of even the flimsiest pretext of legality regarding the so-called boozing of the Amber finally. Even Western military officials admit that it was not quote-unquote imminently dangerous. Instead, they complain it was quote-unquote unfriendly and provocative. Frankly, boo-hoo. What do you expect holding exercises on Russia's doorstep while fighting an indirect war against it in Ukraine? A friendly chat among sailors over a shift's grog? Didn't got that. Well, I have to improve my English skills. That's what I'm doing. And yet, everyone in NATO, EU establishment politics and its mainstream media has been singing the same old tyrant song once again, Sotovos. Russia is coming, Russia is already here, Russia is everywhere. The new head of Germany's spy agency, the Bundesnachrichtendienst, seems to believe that his job is not to do secret things quietly, but to join the chorus of the panic mongers. He also has sleepless visions of the Russians attacking just any day now. Maybe from right under his bed or out of his cupboard, one must suppose. It is almost as if they were all reading from the same hymn sheet, that is, memo. And of course, the new wave of self-induced hyperventilation has been milked for all it's worth, a lot, as in billions of euros, for yet more money to spend on armaments, including but not limited to a quote-unquote drone wall, while ordinary people are subjected to ever more brutal austerity. Even more disturbingly, there is a clear drive to concentrate ever more powers with those same political establishments that can stop ruling by frightening and confusing their own citizens. That the drone stories are already crumbling makes no difference. A dramatic French attempt, special forces and all, to pin nefarious drone activity on the tanker, for instance, has failed miserably. In Germany, a recent sighting has actually been cleared up quickly. The culprit, a hapless German drone amateur who must be living under a rock, and perish the thought that Ukraine itself might have anything to do with those mystery drones. Its regime had plenty of motive, and by now even the West has been compelled to acknowledge that it is perfectly capable of massive sabotage operations and lies to manipulate its European backers, because that is now even the official story of the Nord Stream terror attack. But thinking logically, verbatim, this guy is smart, I guess, but is too dynamic maybe. Instead, let's pretend that we know what we don't know. Russia, and start overreacting again based on our ignorance and panic at best, on a malevolent, deliberate strategy of cognitive warfare against our own countries at worst. In Germany, for instance, both Chancellor Friedrich Merz and Defense Minister Boris Pistorius have made the bizarre claim that while the country is not yet at war, it is also no longer at peace. Crazy. And the Russians are coming ahead of the BND. He feels the current peace is icy at best and drum roll could turn into heated confrontation at any moment. What is that even supposed to mean? If they're a backhanded admission, finally, that Germany has made a deliberate and awfully self-harming choice to fight Russia through Ukraine. If so, thank you. Hauptmann obvious. During last year's Ukrainian kamikaze offensive, German tanks got shredded once again in the vicinity of Kursk. and the 1943 site of the largest tank battle in history. And guess who lost? We have noticed that much. How about you? Our supposed leaders stopped playing with fire? Or are these fear-mongering statements meant to prepare the ground for a concrete power grab? That is what Roderich Kiesewetter, an ultra-Russophobe and war fantasist from Merz on center-right CDU party, has already suggested explicitly. He wants the German parliament to declare the so-called Spannungsfall, literally, quote-unquote, situation of tension. In the mainstream media, for instance, the important newspaper, well, the usual information warriors are already amplifying Kiesewetter's message. And yet another striking coincidence, a recent military exercise called, quote-unquote, Red Storm Bravo in Hamburg, one of Germany's biggest cities, was dedicated to cosplaying the quote-unquote Spannungsfall with maximum publicity. The consequences of initiating quote-unquote Spannungsfall, a kind of official pre-war, are complex and severe. Open-ended compulsory and universal military service is only one of them. The army can be used domestically. Citizens can be drafted for work. Civil rights are painfully restricted. Those critical of government policy, NATO, or the quote-unquote Spannungsfall itself can be casual, even worse than usual. Last but not least, the quote-unquote Spannungsfall allows the government to postpone or otherwise influence elections. In Germany, it will be an ideal vehicle for the traditional parties to at least stall the consequences of their own failure, unpopularity, and decline on one side, and the rise of challengers on the so-called populists near right and left on the other. And well, I'm going to stop now because I have to leave. But as usual, it's interesting. It's a good article from Taril